Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I am so glad you're here today as we continue our Python journey together. Before we dive into the code, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you never miss any of our upcoming lessons. Today we are talking about a very important topic, typecasting in Python. This is a key skill for every beginner because it teaches you exactly how to convert one data type into another. Whether you're turning text into numbers or decimals into whole numbers, this video will make it super easy for you. So let's get started. Now let's answer the main question. What exactly is typecasting? In simple terms, typecasting, which is also frequently called type conversion, is the mechanical process of changing a value from one data type into another. Think of it as telling Python to look at a piece of data in a completely different way. As you can see on the slide, every single value in Python has a specific type. For example, we have integers for whole numbers, floats for decimal values, and strings for text. Usually, Python keeps these types separate, but there are many situations where we need them to work together. Let's look at the example shown here. Imagine you have the text 10. Even though it looks like a number to us, Python sees it as a string because it is wrapped in quotes. You cannot perform addition or subtraction on a string. To do any kind of math with it, we must use typecasting to convert that text into the actual number 10. Understanding this conversion is fundamental. It allows your programs to handle user input correctly and ensures that your calculations are accurate without any errors. By mastering this simple concept, you gain full control over how your data is processed inside your code. Now let's talk about the first type of conversion, which is called implicit typecasting. The best thing about this is that it is completely automatic. You don't have to write any extra code or do any work yourself because Python is smart enough to handle it for you to prevent any data loss. That if you look at the flowchart on the slide, you can see how this works during a calculation. Let's look at the operands we have here. An integer with the value of 5 and a float with the value of 2.5. When we try to add these two together in our code, as you can see in the example where $x is 5 and $y is 2.5, something interesting happens. Python looks at both values and realizes that one is a whole number and the other has a decimal. Instead of giving an error, Python performs what we call a promotion. It automatically promotes the integer 5 into a float, which is 5.0. By doing this, it can successfully add them together to give us the result of 7.5 without losing any decimal information. This is a key rule in Python. It will always move to the larger, or more complex data type to ensure that your data stays accurate. It's a very helpful feature that keeps your basic math operations running smoothly behind the scenes. Now let's move on to the second type, which is explicit typecasting. Unlike the automatic version we just saw, this is manual. This means that as a programmer, you have to tell Python exactly when and how to convert a value by using built-in functions to force that change. There are three main functions we use for this, as shown in the blocks on your screen. First, we have the int function. This is used to convert a value into a whole number. A very important thing to notice here is that if you convert a float like 9.9 into an integer, it doesn't round it up to 10. It simply cuts off the decimal and gives you 9. Next, we have the float function. This does the opposite by converting a whole number into a decimal. For example, if you pass the number 10 through this function, it becomes 10.0. This is very useful when you need high precision for your calculations. Finally, we have the str function, which converts any value into a string or text. If you have the number 500 and you want to use it inside a sentence or display it as text, you wrap it in this function to turn it into 500 in quotes. Explicit typecasting gives you total control over your data, ensuring that every variable is in exactly the right format for the task you are trying to perform. Now let's see how this works in a real Python script. We'll start by creating a simple variable called x and giving it a value of 10. This is currently an integer. Next, we want to convert this integer into a decimal. To do that, we create another variable called result and use the built-in float function on our variable x. By doing this, we are manually forcing Python to change the integer 10 into a floating point number. Now, let's add a print statement to see what's happening inside. We'll type print result. Finally, let's run the program. As you can see in the terminal, the output is 10.0. The integer has successfully become a float. It's that simple. Next, let's look at converting a decimal into a whole number. We'll start by defining a new variable, y, and assigning it a float value of 3.4. This represents our starting data type. Now, to perform an explicit conversion, we'll create a variable called result. By using the int function on our variable y, we are telling Python to manually transform this float into an integer. To see the effect of this conversion, let's write a print statement. We'll type print result. Note that in newer versions of Python you'll need parentheses here, but we are focusing on the core logic of the data change. Finally, we run the script. Take a look at the terminal below. Even though our original value was 3.4, the output is now 3. Python has successfully stripped away the decimal part to give us a clean integer. Now we are going to learn how to combine numbers and text in a single message. First, let's create a variable called age and set it to the integer 25. This represents a numerical value. Now we want to create a sentence that includes this age. We'll define a new variable called message. We start with a string, I am. Notice the space after the word am. This ensures our sentence doesn't look crowded. Next, we use a plus sign to add our age. But wait, we can't add an integer directly to a string. To fix this, we use the str function. By typing str age, we are converting the number 25 into text so Python can link it to our sentence. We'll add another plus sign and the string year old to finish the message. This combination of text and variables is called concatenation. Now let's type print message to prepare our output. Finally, we click the run button. Look at the terminal, the output reads, I am 25-year-old. By using the str function, we successfully combine different data types into one clear sentence. Now let's look at a real-world example of why typecasting is so important. When we use the input function in Python, it always treats the data as text or a string. This can lead to a common mistake when we want to do math. Look at the problem section on the slide. If we ask a user for their age and they type 20, Python sees this as the text 20, not the number 20. If we then try to add 5 to it, the program will crash. You cannot add a number to text and Python will give you an error. To fix this, we look at the solution. We wrap the entire input function inside an int function. By doing this, we are telling Python to take whatever the user types and immediately convert it into a whole number. Now, when the user types 20, it actually becomes the integer 20. When we run the code print age plus 5, Python can successfully perform the math. Instead of an error, we get the correct output of 25. Always remember, if you want to do math with user input, you must convert it first. Let's look at another common situation where typecasting is necessary. Often you will want to display a message that includes both text and a numerical value, like a player's score in a game. If you look at the section labeled "This causes an error," you can see why this is tricky. We have a variable called score set to 100. When we try to print the message "Your score is plus score," Python gets confused. In Python's eyes, you are trying to add a piece of text to a mathematical number. Because these are different data types, the program will stop and show a type error. To fix this, we use the solution on the right. We wrap our numerical variable inside the str function. By writing str score, we are temporarily turning that number 100 into the text 100. Now both sides of the plus sign are text. Python can easily join them together. When you run this code, the output will be a perfect sentence. Your score is 100. Just remember, whenever you want to join a number to a string, the str function is your best friend. To wrap up our lesson on typecasting, let's look at 3 very important rules that every Python programmer should know. First, be careful with data loss. When you convert a float, a number with a decimal, into an integer using the int function, Python does not round the number. Instead, it simply deletes everything after the decimal point. As you can see on the slide, even a number like 9.9 becomes 9. This is a quick way to lose data if you aren't careful. Second, watch out for value errors. You can only convert a string into an integer if that string actually contains a number, like the text 123. If you try to use int on a word like hello, your program will crash because Python doesn't know how to turn letters into numbers. Finally, always check your types. If you are ever unsure whether a variable is a string or a number, use the type function. For example, if we have x equals 50 in quotes, running type x will show you that it is a string. Checking your types regularly is the best way to avoid errors and write clean, successful code. To finish our lesson, let's look at this quick summary table. You can keep this as a cheat sheet to help you remember how typecasting works in Python. As we can see in the table, the int function takes a decimal like 3.99 and gives us back a whole number 3. The float function does the opposite. It takes a whole number like 5 and adds a decimal point to make it 5.0. If we need to turn a number into text for a message, we use str to turn 100 into the string 100. And finally, we can use int to turn numerical text like 50 back into a real number. At the bottom of the slide, we have 3 key takeaways. First, remember that implicit conversion is what Python does automatically. Second, explicit conversion is what we do ourselves using the functions we learned today. And most importantly, watch out. Always remember that decimal data is lost when you use int. Use these tools correctly, and you will have full control over your data in Python. Thank you for joining this lesson. If this was helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more Python tutorials. See you in the next lesson.